His sitting is resumed. Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak today on this bill concerning the Rural and Urban Development Commission. This merger has been long in coming, and I really truly celebrate the fact that it is here and that we're making progress. And here's the reason why. Our government has embarked on a program where we are seeking to rationalize all of the services which we offer to Barbadians. As part of our program, it has been necessary for us to make sure that all of our state-owned enterprises run efficiently, run economically, and deliver services that are needed. And sir, what we have embarked on is a deconstruct and reconstruct project for everything in our government. And what was shared earlier by the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, when he shared that what we are seeking to do is to see how we can leverage digitization and IT technology to be able to improve what we're doing in this part of our government service, reduce the red tape, be able to increase accessibility of the ordinary citizen to housing and housing repairs, to eliminate duplications, and most importantly, to modernize the processes that we are using. So UDC and RDC merger is just one of many initiatives that this government will undertake to be able to improve the satisfaction of our citizens by providing them with timely, efficient, cost-effective services that deliver the results that people need to have. And all of this helps to improve the quality of their lives. Now, you ask the question, what is the context within which a government seeks to undertake this type of rationalization of its services that seeks to improve the delivery of its services? And sir, when governments find themselves on the cusp of major change or on the cusp of challenging times, that is one of the things that you have to do if you're going to prepare your citizenry for a battle, if you're going to prepare your citizenry for a new challenge, for a transition. It is absolutely necessary that you rethink how you're doing things and adequately prepare the citizens and all of the institutions in your country to be able to make that transition to a new platform. And this is what we are doing in relation to this merger with UDC and RDC. So one of the things that you need to do is to look at how you're going to leverage technology and be able to use the new advances to be able to improve your services. And you would see that one of the things that we have been doing is the introduction of IT into all of our systems. We've been creating in our schools the necessary technology that our children can learn how to use technology, that they'll be competent in a new environment, the introduction of things like AI. You also know that we have been doing via MIST, our Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, we are trying to work towards creating data-driven decisions by making sure that we not only collect data, but we use the analysis to inform how can we improve our systems. And UDC and RDC will benefit from that type of analysis to be able to help them to be able to better plan for Barbados, both rural and urban. In addition to that, what we also do is look at how we can improve our collaboration and coordination. And one of the things that this government has put in place is the establishment, one, of the senior ministers, and assign a set of ministries that are to work together instead of working in silos, that they work at an interministerial level to deliver better service to the people of Barbados. And that is part of what we've done. Another element that forms a part of our deconstruct, reconstruct to build a better and more modern Barbados is the creation of public-private sector partnerships, such as what you would have seen in the TAP program. These are things that allow us to get people, the ordinary citizen, participating in whatever activity is going so that they become part of the people who experience the prosperity of change. And UDC and RDC have been one of the forerunners of that type of initiative in Barbados. Under Owen Seymour Arthur, the two entities were challenged to do a number of things. Yes, they needed to improve the rural and urban roads. They needed to improve housing for poor people, etc. But one of the things that they were able to do was to be a living example of private-public partnership, where we were able to bring a lot of small contractors in and give them the opportunity to repair homes, build new homes. Some even got a little job in doing the road building, the small contractors that had the road building capabilities. And therefore, we were able to start a process of empowerment all the way back from when we first came to government in the Arthur administration back in 1994, 1995. And these two entities have done so well in ensuring that we embrace small businesses and small contractors to be a part of the prosperity and be a part of the solutions which we are offering to Barbadians. So for example, with UDC, they were able, for example, in the Fairchild Street redevelopment project, there were 62 work contractors who got work in that project. 28 who supplied materials, 18 who provided services, and 5 multidisciplinary consultancy firms were used to be able to manage the project. This is empowerment of small people in their own country to be a part of the development and the prosperity and the growth of the nation. And with the Baxter's Road project, as was mentioned by the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, 5 contractors, 3 service providers were able to be a part of that program. But across the broad spectrum of Barbados, close to 105 contractors every year, small contractors, get the opportunity to work between UDC and RDC to be able to provide services. And this is important. This is how our small businesses grow. I know that as a member of the RDC board, and also when I had the privilege of being the president of the Small Business Association, I remember that we had a relationship with RDC, and they secured the services of the Small Business Association to provide entrepreneurship training for small businesses. Barbados had just come out of the crisis under the Dems, under the Honourable Mr. Erskine Sandiford. We'd just come out of that crisis. And it was absolutely necessary because of the high unemployment to be able to create jobs. And I remember one of the promises that we made was that 30,000 jobs would be created. Now, at the time, many people didn't know how the Honourable Member for St. Peter at that time was going to create 30,000 jobs. But how was it done? RDC and UDC was part of that strategy and that entrepreneurship program. That relationship, that public-private partnership between the SBA and the government of Barbados allowed us to be able to train more than 1,000 entrepreneurs in all elements of business endeavor. And that came at a propitious time because so many people had been laid off during that crisis that we had under the Dems in the 1991-1994 period. A lot of people who thought that their jobs were safe, they were working in government, they were working in a good job, and then suddenly found themselves without work. Then found that they had to turn to entrepreneurship, turn to their skills. But an interesting phenomena came out of that period. The Barbadians had the tendency that as soon as the economy got better, they ran back to their jobs and forgot the entrepreneurship that they were in. But during that period of crisis, we saw a new thing happening, and the entrepreneurship training was part of why they did not turn back. Many people stayed with their entrepreneurial activity. And that led to the growth of close to 10,000 small businesses in this country as Barbadians gained the confidence, took the risk, and got out there and started to do what they needed to do, follow their dreams, and realize that, look, nowhere is safe, so I might as well follow my dreams. And we had the privilege at the SBA to be a part of that program. That is how important using public-private partnerships as part of your transformation process of deconstruct and reconstruct. And this was the role that RDC was able to play so powerfully at that time. The other two areas that are necessary when you are seeking to deconstruct and reconstruct and positioning the country for greater efficiency, as we're doing with RDC and UDC, is to have the necessary performance metrics and accountability. You can change anything you want to change. You can put in whatever technology you want to put in. If you don't hold people accountable to perform, it will put all of your labor in Maxwell Pond. And this is why the PRDS program was started. This is why we are looking at mission transformation. And this is why within the UDC-RDC partnership, one of the things that is going to be critical if they're going to deliver for the country is that we ensure that people perform, ensure that people get the training, and that we hold them accountable to be able to produce at the level that they need to produce to ensure that we achieve our objectives of a better life for all of our people. Now, sir, why is it that we've had need for this? This is because we are going through a period of great uncertainty and major changes taking place across the world. And a number of countries, in recognizing this, have been very proactive in putting in place in their own countries these types of reforms that we are undertaking with UDC and RDC to ensure that they properly position their countries to be able to manage that wave of change and position themselves in a new global environment. So places like the UAE would have put together something called the Dubai Now app, where you have 130 government services on an app that the citizen no longer has to go and stand up in a line. That is change, that is efficiency, that is service. In South Korea, they have Government 3.0. This is where they have open data. This is where they encourage citizen participation. This is where they work on transparency, where people can see what the government is doing, why it is doing it, and being able to give an account. Just now we are going to have the estimates, and some of us are going to be in the well. We are coming to the well to be able to share in a way that people understand what we have been doing with their money and their resources, holding us accountable. Singapore has also been in the forefront of making a number of changes with their smart city technology and digital government services. So what we are attempting to do here today in bringing UDC and RDC together is the beginning of a journey for them to be part of this revolution which we are creating here in Barbados. And what is the deep reason why we needed to do it? Was it a whim? No. Apart from the changes in the international system, we also had resource constraints that made it necessary for us to find new ways to do things to be able to save costs. We also had higher public expectations. The public now expects more from their government. They expect more from their taxpayer dollars. And so they are looking for improved delivery. You only have to listen to brass tacks day after day to hear people raising the issues, whether the issues are with the port, whether the issues are with health, whether the issues, whatever they are, people bring those and raise them because they're saying, we want better delivery of service. And this government is committed to improving our delivery of service, and hence our merger for UDC and RDC. Now, the uncertain times which we are facing, when we came to government, we were anticipating that we would just have to deal with the debt crisis that Barbados had. We were anticipating that the economic downturn that was created by the poor management of the Democratic Labour Party was going to be our major issue. And as in true Barbados Labour Party form, we never come to government without a plan. When we are in opposition, we are hammering out a plan. We come in knowing what we have to do, when we have to do it, and how we have to do it. And we came with that. And sir, we hit the ground running, addressing the problem that was in front of us. But as we were beginning to deal with the issue and come out of the issue, everybody knows that we then found ourselves with the COVID crisis that then threw the whole world into a tailspin. We know that before we could recover from that, we had the supply chain management problems that led to the increased global prices, etc. Then we had ash, we had storms, etc. Barbados has faced a series of challenges. Sir, we were looking forward to 2025 being a time of being able to hold a steady course and continue our upward trajectory. And sir, with one election, the globe went into a major upheaval that we now have to prepare ourselves for. And sir, when you have these uncertain times, and this is the main point I want to get home to us as Barbadians and to the good people who work in UDC and RDC and every government entity. We have to understand the national strategy and everybody has to get behind it. Our responsibility is to explain it in ways that people understand why they need to change what they are doing, manage their expectations. I'll give you an example of why it is important and how it helps for a country when it's going through challenging times to have everybody together of one mind working in common cause. Back in biblical days, we all studied the life of Joseph, what he went through, that ended it up with him being in Egypt and falling into prison. But in prison, his ability to interpret dreams was recognized. And so he was brought out of prison to interpret a dream of the Pharaoh. And Joseph gave the interpretation of the dream. The dream was that there'll be 7 years of plenty and there'll be 7 years of lean. That the world was going to go through a crisis and that a strategy had to be devised to save the world from this climate crisis. Sounds familiar? Joseph was then able to persuade the head of Egypt that we need to put a strategy in place. The Pharaoh, thank you. He was leader. And Egypt, I always ask myself why Egypt was chosen. But it was because Egypt had capacity, it was a center of learning, they had leadership capability, they had that knowledge that was there. Because what was going to be needed was an entire program to be able to not only save Egypt, but save the world, given these 7 years of plenty and 7 years of lean. It meant that they had to look at what they were going to do in agriculture and get the whole agricultural sector to move together. It meant they had to develop public and private partnerships, because now you had to start constructing the barns that were going to hold all this excess grain. You had to develop a transport system to bring in the grain. You had to pay the farmers for the grain that they brought. You had to create an efficient system for the management of that grain. And then, in terms of the distribution, you needed integrity and transparency to manage the efficient distribution of that grain. But what did that require of the Egyptians? It required everybody to understand that during the time of plenty, we were not to squander. That we had to put aside excess, we had to save. Everybody had to get on board with the plan. It meant in the time of lean that was not the time for businesses to try to profit off of the need of people, but rather to try to maintain the prices at a reasonable level that everybody could eat. It meant that the public sector, their performance was paramount for helping to manage this program over that 14-year period, and the citizens had to be prepared to stay the course. And they must not allow themselves to be overcome by greed and fear and hoarding and profit gouging, but rather understand that we're all in this together if we're going to get out and manage efficiently 7 years of plenty and several years of lean. And that's the lesson that is before us now, Mr. Speaker. This is what we are doing. We are now faced with a situation where we have to operate in an environment that is changing as we speak. Even today, as we are discussing this matter, there's a big forum in Paris on artificial intelligence that is going to change forever how we live, how we work, how we do things. Barbados has to look at how it is going to prepare its citizens to understand it, to engage it. We have to prepare our enterprises to understand how to incorporate it so that we are part of what is happening on that world stage. Otherwise, our economy is going to be left behind. And this is why this is so important. And so, what does a government do in order to ensure that we position our people to be able to move forward and to be able to position them to be able to work through the renewed RUDC to be able to take Barbados forward? Sir, earlier one of my colleagues, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, shared about what we put aside for the transformation of the urban and rural corridors of Barbados. And he made the comparison between what we offered and what the Dems offer. And this is important, sir, because in this chamber, we hear a lot of pretty words from the Honourable Member for Christchurch South. And there's a talk about the poor black man, the poor small man. And anyone listening would think that in the heart of the Democratic Labour Party, there beats a heart that seeks to put poor people first. But sir, of recent years is never gone beyond the issue of language, the issue of talk. And it was pointed out to us here in the chamber that in prior years, we would give significant sums of $10 million to the UDC, RDC, to ensure that they had the resources that they could make changes in people's lives. And it was cross-compared that during the period of the Dems, they would only give $5 million, but yet talking about what we gave to fishermen, which was $7 million. And the $7 million was what they got in their hand. It was nothing to do with the millions of dollars that were invested in causing the fish markets to be improved and the monies that we are spending on improving catches, etc. Over $100 million has been invested in that sector to allow our fishermen to earn more. What we are doing here now is we are seeking to create for Barbadians through our efforts with RDC and UDC, bringing them together to increase their efficiency in reaching out and helping the average Barbadian. I was distressed when the former member who represented St. Peter, the Honourable Owen Seymour Arthur, had introduced the urban initiative where we would purchase land and the person could pay $250 and the Barbados government would pay the remaining $8. And the Dems cut that off at its knees. I am raising this because I have in the constituency of St. James South dozens of families in a village called Durance Village there in Holders Hill, who were people who believed and trusted their government. And just as we were coming out of office and made the offer to them. Many of them took up their savings and went in and paid their money so that they could at last own their home. 10 years of the Dems, no provision whatsoever to allow those people to earn the opportunity to own a piece of land. That was nothing to what they did to the ones in the housing estates who put their money in and then did not want to give them back after they said they would give people the thing free, and left government without giving people those houses. Very few of them ever had legal title to that house. But back in Durance, I have got dozens of families who have paid and as yet cannot own that piece of land. And I have walked there with the Prime Minister. I've walked there with the Honourable representative for Christchurch West when he was the Minister of Housing, to talk with the people. And I have to bless the Urban Development Commission. After hearing the plight of those families, because they said to me, we are getting older. We could die and not see this transaction completed. What would be our legal position should something like that happen? Would my offspring be entitled to get it? Who will protect their interests? And so they begged us to try to advance this process of them owning their own piece of land. And I have to commend the Urban Development Commission. They came down, they went to every house, they interviewed everyone, they did the assessments, they worked out all of the plots that were there and examined what needed to be done. And what they did was they created a plan and submitted it to the ministry in order to provide an opportunity for the good people of Durance Village to be like other Barbadians in this country, to own a piece of the rock. That's the type of work that we need them to do. This is how they help to empower Barbadians, not just the contractors who get work, but the householders who own homes. This is what is important. And I was very pleased to hear the report of the Honourable Member for Christchurch West saying that we have commenced again this process of empowerment. I am looking forward, Honourable Member, to you reaching Durance Village to help the good people of Durance Village to be able to get a hold of a piece of this rock before many of them die. Now, sir, I want to end with this commendation and admonition to the people of Barbados. I know that change is uncomfortable. I know that everything is not perfect in our country. But I want the citizens of Barbados to understand that change will create some level of disruption. Change will often require patience. To get from point A to point Z can take time. And one of the things that we need is for people to understand, if we quicken the pace of change, then you will have to increase either your borrowings or increase your taxation. If you don't want the government to borrow or to slow down on borrowing, then you have to be more patient in waiting for things to get done, whether it's housing, whether it's roads, whether it's the hospital, regardless of what it is. We can't have it both ways. We can't have good roads, quick housing, good hospitals, and at the same time not borrow. Because if you don't borrow, you have to tax. And we know that they're already burdened in relation to the cost of living. So adding more tax on that would not be a good thing for their quality of life. So I ask of them to understand the strategy that is being put on the ground. We have opted to do two things. Can we position the economy to increase productivity so that we get more earnings, that we can pay back our loans and continue to pay our bills? And the only way to increase productivity is if every man jack in this country gets up on a morning and gets out to work and works with all of their heart. That is what a whole of country approach requires. It's not about complaining. That when we're talking about holding a government accountable, we have to hold ourselves accountable too. Are we playing our part? It is absolutely vital that our people understand we are not babies, we're not children. We have to take responsibility for our country. There is nobody in this world who is coming to rescue us if we don't get this right. And that is why it is important for every single citizen to pay attention to the news. Too many citizens do not listen to the news. They do not read the papers, and therefore they do not keep pace with what is happening. And it makes them easy prey for manipulators who want to come and pollute the environment with lies and fake news and misconceptions. And they get fooled listening to rhetoric and fantasies that cannot possibly make any kind of sense. So I'm urging Barbadians, you owe it to yourself to seek to understand what is happening at this point in time. The second thing I want to urge Barbadians to do, change is not comfortable. I said that before. Because while we want things outside of us to change, to get there, it means that we have to change behaviors, we have to change habits, we have to change expectations, and this is where the discomfort comes. If we are going to ensure that Barbados transitions on this journey where we're trying to manage our own 7 years of lean and 7 years of plenty, if we're going to manage that crisis, that challenge, it is absolutely necessary that each Barbadian looks at what they are doing as a Barbadian and change the habits that are retarding the country from its growth. Sir, absenteeism is a big problem in this country. Absenteeism, slightest thing, people stay home, don't come work. And presenteeism is even worse. Come to work and don't do anything, sir. It is absolutely necessary that we start to improve the quality of leadership that we have in both the public and private sectors, and it is important that we improve the level of productivity in both the public and private sectors. It is absolutely necessary. I went on a website to check what is the ratio between the input of capital and the output of labor and where we were in the table. Barbados was not even in the first 50 countries for its productivity. What does that mean? It means that when a small business person invests money in a business, and he hires someone to come and work with him, he secures services to help him do his business, that the rate and pace at which we were and the quality of work that we output, it fails to allow him to meet the standards and create the customer satisfaction, and therefore affects his capacity to be able to produce the profit that he is expecting from the money that he saved and invested or borrowed. And we are constantly destroying the opportunity of creating profit by how we behave as Barbadians. And I want to urge Barbadians, let us work. Let us stop littering. Let us stop mashing up the buses and the schools. Let us stop destroying public infrastructure Let us clean around ourselves. If we can begin to do that, then we will be supporting the strategy that we are putting in place to move Barbados to a higher place, because the government would not have to double back to spend more money on those things. We could use those funds now to take us a step further down the road. I want to urge every Barbadian, get on board, stay the course. Let us manage our situation and let us move this nation forward for the benefit of ourselves and our children. I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wish to add my contribution to this debate, sir, and to indicate how proud I am to be a member of this honourable chamber and, of course, the Barbados Labour Party, because this is now the continuation of a project that was started way back in the 1970s, early 1980s, to be able to look after the needs of people in rural and urban Barbados, particularly those who were impoverished. And the focus would have been on, first, housing. I had the privilege, sir, to be living in a constituency in the center of the island that was at that time headed by none other than our late Prime Minister and the Honourable Member for St. Thomas. And as a young girl, and those are some of the things that caused me to gravitate towards the Labour Party in this way. As a young girl, I witnessed many houses in the neighborhoods in the environs of St. Thomas and other parishes being upgraded. As far as I recall, the focus was on senior citizens. And you know, Mr. Speaker, sir, in those rural communities, a lot of people did not have land of their own, number one. But they had their little gable roof houses with a little shed roof and so. And when I learned of that project, I felt so proud to see the transformation of the housing of those seniors in particular, because at the end of the day, those seniors would have been the breadwinners. And those persons who worked so hard in Barbados over many, many decades in the sugar industry, in people's houses on plantations and all that. And of course, Mr. Speaker, sir, they had many children as compared with now, we're only having few children being born to carry this population forward. However, I felt very proud to know that they did not only repair the houses, but they added on waterborne toilets, facilities, in order for the seniors to be able to go out if there were callings at night. They would not have to go out in the rain and in the cold wind, as I will refer, sir, because St. Thomas would have had a lot of rain, as is the custom, as well as those old people who were suffering, those seniors. And of course, the whole mantra was making sure that we have a better life for our people, especially the most vulnerable. And that trend continued under the Barbados Labour Party. And when the late Honourable Member for St. Peter became the Prime Minister, he continued to focus on that trend, ensuring that those who were impoverished, those who suffered for whatever reason and their homes could not be prepared in a manner that they could be able to rest in peace, knowing that when the rain falls, as it does in the constituency in Thomas every day, that they won't be getting wet, that they won't have to be shifting the old bed, that they won't have to be in the kitchen cooking and water dropping. And there were so many challenges because of the situation at that time. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am proud to know that that trend with the urban and rural development has continued to be able to reach all those persons in Barbados who are impoverished. And it's not only the center of the island, but indeed that whole practice and that whole policy, I should say, extended across the length and breadth of this country, making sure that the officers in the Ministry of Housing and Lands go around and check to make sure that these people met the criteria, number one. And of course, for those individuals whom you could write in and say, please let your officers check Mary Jane and Peter Louis and whichever name it was, so that they, and those officers from the rural and urban development were on the ground from then till now, seeking to assist the impoverished, those who cannot help themselves, particularly the aged, single women with children, the disabled, and others in this society. And I think there's a trend that should continue, because the Bible talks about us having the poor with us all the time, and we understand that to a point. However, there are so many people who have needs for shelter, repairs to the house, the facilities and so on, but because of their privacy, they don't like everybody else to know what is going on in their households. And therefore, the investigations by the officers on the ground help them to be able to collect their information and to identify those who were in need and truly in need. Now, I have had a difficulty, Mr. Speaker, because I want to continue where the Honourable Member for St. George South spoke this morning, when he focused on that IDB loan of $30 million US, which amounted to $60 million at the time, and it was specially designed for communities that needed upgrades. The Garden Land, Allen View, Cat's Castle, Greenfield. Those are communities where the spaces where houses were, particularly the ones in urban Barbados, the spaces were so limited, but the housing needed upgrading. And I know that we had a community in Barbados, we used to call it Rotten Town, where nearly every house needed upgrades, but because there were so many poor people who owned them, or they were squatting on them, they could not upgrade their houses on their own. And therefore the government, with a government that is responsible, stepped in to ensure that the better quality of life reach those people and give them opportunities for their children and their families to improve. Now that $60 million Barbados dollars from the 30 million that it was then, that project was conceived by the Honourable Member, for the city and the Honourable Member for St. James South at that time. Both were ministers, or distinguished Dame Billy, if you will allow me to call her name, and the Honourable Minister Thompson at that time, who is now in the Honourable Senate. And those two ladies came up with that vision because they too had the sympathy, the empathy, the concern in their hearts for these persons who were living in such substandard situations. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, and it pains my heart more than anybody else's at this time, because see, people seem to think that St. Thomas needs to be left out of nearly everything. Fortunately, the project was designed, including Allen View. It was the only rural community. And Allen View became the environmental protection zone with Harrison's Cave there. And you will recall, sir, perhaps, where one lady lived in the village and she was wearing pigs. And then the water that washed down into the Harrison's Cave discolored the stalagmites and the stalactites to a point. And that lady was relocated to St. Lucie. However, other hundreds of people live in Allen View. It is not the forgotten village, because the people in there are extremely cohesive in whatever they do, because they are particularly families. So one set of family here and the children are living over there and so. But to this day, you know, Mr. Speaker, that project came to fruition when the government changed in 2008. To this day, Mr. Speaker, the $5 million that were to be allocated to Allen View to upgrade it with the sewering and all that, to stop whatever refuge, whatever would have been effluent would have been penetrating the cave, which is the most wonderful place you could ever want in the world for us, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, no money was spent in Allen View, no sewering took place. To this day, Mr. Speaker, the folk of Allen View cannot expand their houses. There are about 10 households with no water, no running water. Every time they apply to Water Authority, they're told it is the environmental protection zone, so we cannot give you water. Can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, a parish that the rain falls every day? People in Allen View have to rely on the neighbor to get water from them because they had their water installed before that project came up. To this day, the same thing is happening. I can talk from now till the cows come home. Call Water Authority and they give me the same story. If that project as was perceived had been implemented, Mr. Speaker, the folk of Allen View would be living a better life. But you know what? The Honourable Member for the Ministry of Housing has indicated, Minister of the Ministry of Housing, has indicated to me, yes, the plan for the houses at 40 acre, there are 12 house spots. Those who are in Allenview are to be relocated, and it's just as good an environment and close enough. They will get those spots for free. They can walk up the road and see their families. They can go to meet them, whatever. But the point I'm making is Allenview still has not got the services. As a result of that, 30 million US dollars, when converted, would have become 60 million Barbados dollars, and 31.7 I think it was million dollars were repatriated to the IDB. When that money could have been spent, but you know what was spent, Mr. Speaker? Property, and I love people of Barbados. I don't make distinctions because I love human beings. But you know where the money was spent? By the Democratic Labour Party as the government then. And the minister who was the minister for the city, the MP for the city, he went to his households and he told them, you all want your house start repaired? I have a project, and people got through, and I'm not complaining about that because the people in the city are people too, and Barbadians. But the point I'm making, the money was redirected from the focus. And now my people in Allenview are still suffering, are in that environmental protection zone, which means sections of Bryans and so, cannot go forward. But rural development has come on board and assisted with some houses. Not all. They have worked, I believe, as best as they could to be able to ensure that people got their houses upgraded, because that is a human need. And despite wherever you are, whichever political party you're part of, or whatever persuasion you are, you should not be excluded from the resources that the country offers to everybody else. All of us are important in God's eyes. All of us should be important in the eyes of whichever government there is. And the pie must be shared equally to ensure that those who are feeling downtrodden or living in environments where they need the upgrades, that any good government will pay attention and address those needs. I want to say, sir, I am happy to know that those two entities will be joined together. Communities have been targeted, and I believe too that we will be able over time to make a difference. I know that a lot of money that was in the budget all in the 2008 and beyond, up until the time when the government changed, that we became the government, that money was misappropriated, money was sent different places, all kinds of things were happening, and we just could not understand. I know that 6-story building at Vaucluse was built for quite some millions of dollars, and then even the 6th floor or the 4th floor did not even have a tile on it, but it was told that the building was ready. When that money could have been spent to help to relocate those persons, to help to upgrade other facilities for poor people, the old, the disabled, the single women with children, and so on. That did not happen. The money was redirected otherwise from the government's budget of that time to Vaucluse. And I have no problem with the building because people will be housed in it to do their work and so. But when I look at how things are shifted and there's no legal aspect of it happening, that bothers my heart. And I pray that this Barbados Labour Party does not do it, Madam, Mr. Speaker, sir, because it is not fair to the people of Barbados. I am happy to know that some of the houses in St. Thomas were repaired as a result of the tropical storm Elsa, I think it would have been. I know it had been, where quite a few of the houses, in especially areas on the heights like Erie Court, and places like Spring Farm and so, the houses that got damaged were poor people's houses. Rural development did come on board and assist us in having those houses upgraded. The only thing I want to make with the caution with this amalgamation, however, sir, is that there be proper management of the affairs. Yes, you have a pit toilet and you want to get your waterborne toilet. Yes, your house might be leaking, the roof might be bad, the siding boards might be bad and so on. You want the upgrades. But you want it to be done in a professional manner. So you don't want old pieces of board spliced in. You do not want to have your good windows and then the contractor comes and says, I'm going to change these windows for new ones, but take your windows and put them in somebody else's house. If your windows are good, leave them. Let whoever else needs windows, give them new windows because they need them, they require them. We want proper coordination if once the two entities are going together so that you do not see what I witness at times. I still have houses from Thomas that have not been touched, but I'm grateful because I know it is not just a St. Thomas challenge, it is across the island, and the budget that we're using is one budget. However, those persons who will be working in the combined entities, I would like to again recommend that there be proper management and supervision, not only of the funds, but those who are doing the building. Sometimes people get 10 houses to do in either of the entities at this time. And then 5 years later, 4 houses completed, the rest have not been touched. That creates a problem for me because to live in the house 5 years that is leaking, it's not good enough. I want for us to put people before politics to make sure that we do the right things. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, is I believe that when it comes to the funding as well, from what I picked up with my limited knowledge in building and so on, you see a 2-bedroom house that might cost $90,000. And then one with the same size and everything, and it doesn't have to have any higher foundation, it costs $100 and something thousand. There has to be some kind of balance there. And unless those who are the supervisors of those contractors and those projects keep on the ground, we will have challenges in this country. I learned and I knew before of the various projects, and I heard about, where the rest is that? At Temple Yard. I am so happy that they have been able to get some assistance. I heard of Baxter's Road and so on. But I want this government to know that rural Barbados needs some of these projects too. We are urban and rural, so we want some of those projects to help to expand. Right now, I know that the government and the ministry is looking after setting up some vending areas for persons who have been selling alongside the road, blocking the traffic, but they're trying to make $1. Now, that is a step forward for us to be able to stop at one location as we would down Temple Yard, as we would at Eagle Hall or wherever, for rural Barbados to get the opportunity for people to be in an organized environment where you can go and you can do your purchase without blocking traffic or without causing congestion of some form or fashion. So I'm really extremely happy to know, sir, that that has happened. I have brought with me, and I always have things with me, Mr. Speaker, urban and rural development leadership matters most. And when I see the record, and this is the record of what rural and urban were doing, even before the 1990s, where we saw how the RDC was a savior to, if you would allow me, sir, to hundreds of poor Barbadians in rural communities since 2003, and the commission, and it has shown how all of these houses, 67 new houses, constructed and so on and so forth.
I remember recording from what?
I will make this a document of the house, sir. And you know, sir, I will want to conform with the rules. Urban and rural development, leadership matters most, and this would have been in 1999, early 2000, I believe. And therefore, I'm not going to quote from it now because in the interest of time, but I want to say that things have been happening with urban and rural for many years. I will never forget how we used to call down in a section of St. Michael, Rotten Town, as children traveling in the bus. And you could see the rundown houses and so on. Then we saw a transformation, and the old cars and so removed, and people are now living and breathing a breath of fresh air and feeling empowered as a result of the projects that have been happening, not only in rural Barbados, but we have said in urban Barbados. Once we get the management team between urban and rural to join together and make sure that they stand up for good workmanship. We do not want for the building to take place and then the old windows are put on a little paint and put back in, although they had termite. We want efficiency for the taxpayers' money, because that is really what it is that's being used to be able to upgrade those facilities. I am glad too that those two entities sought to look after those who are disabled, so that if they upgrade a house for someone who has one leg or who is unable to move because of what the difficulty is, that they're putting in the handrails and grab bars in the bathrooms and things of that nature, and they can have enough space to wheel in their wheelchairs. Or for the little old lady like I am, as the guy curse me on the week and say I'm old, go home. I want to be able to hold on something before you slip and fall. You don't have to be old to fall. But I am saying, well, that is a matter for me, sir. I am saying that all of that is combined in the project that the rural and urban development are doing. And I'm glad that the government has gotten the wisdom to be able to say, let me amalgamate the two entities so that at the end of the day, we have persons who are responsible, persons who are properly supervised, and accountability is there. The facilities are there, we can see them, they have been done so that other people feel comfortable knowing mine might be in the next batch. Barbadians need the help. Despite what anybody says, we have thousands of people who are unemployed, most of them because they can't do any better. Some refuse to work. We have the welfare department helping out and other entities of that nature, but we must look after the needs of the poor, particularly women with children, senior citizens, and disabled. Those are the ones who require the immediate attention and the best quality of work, because at the end of the day, despite whatever their frailty is, they may live even longer. And you want it to be so well done that it doesn't fall apart in a few weeks or months' time. Yes? The other thing, Mr. Speaker, that I want to refer to, as I said, is supervision of those persons who are building the projects. We don't want for 10 people to get projects, building out communities, and nobody coming to check to make sure that the material that is used is not second-hand material, that it is good material, whether it be lumber or concrete board, whatever it is, that it is good, so that in the next 3 years, they don't have to come back and say we are getting wet, or something is wrong with the wood, or the handrails fell on. So we want professionalism to take place. And I knew that training had been done for those persons who were the contractors, those persons who were working with those projects. I've witnessed that myself. I don't know if it's happening across the island, but of course you know, sir, that I will go to check to make sure that the best quality service is being extended to those individuals. I also want to say too, and give a caution to the entity as well, because I've got an experience where a young lady was living in her little chattel house. I think it was just a 1-bedroom with a bathroom, and she had asked for the help, and Rural came and upgraded the house, changed up the house and added on a waterborne toilet and so facility. And then the owner of the land apparently did not write to say, I, Mr. Jones, whoever, have given permission for CYF, whoever, to be able to have this house upgraded. And from the time that house was completed, Mr. Speaker, that young lady and her daughter cannot enter. The gentleman said, this is my land, I do not give permission. So I want them to be aware, make sure that every time, if it is on someone's land that the house is being built or upgraded, there is official documentation. And I'm sure that there's a legal component to the ministries that are responsible, because every time the lady says, sees me, she says, I can't go in the house yet. The gentleman said, the land is not mine. So those matters must be cleared before any house is constructed on anybody's land, as is the case with many of them that I've heard about, that the people cannot enter the compound, even though they would have lived there 20 years, 15 years, because the person probably has it for one of their relatives, I don't know, but that is not important now. The fact is that they pursue it every time. Now I have another concern, Mr. Speaker, sir, to do with not a concern, but another matter that I want to put on the table in relation to a donation that Rural Development had made of a pavilion, not quite a pavilion, but it is a structure to fill in as a community center. You will recall, sir, perhaps, that the Rock Hall Social Center was closed in 1988, I believe, to facilitate the magistrates court, the police station, and another aspect of the legal fraternity, that what we call the social center at Rock Hall. And from 1988 until now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I know that the honourable member for St. John has given me an assurance that something will be done. The people of St. Thomas have no place for recreation unless they get access to a school, which will have to be the Lester Vaughan School or some other private entity to be able to function, to have a function and to do certain things. I want to say that in the time of rural development, when a now deceased director would have been at the helm of rural, the owner of the plantation at Canefield, sir, had extended a helping hand, because you would appreciate that the population in that area of Canefield, Dunscombe, Spring Farm, Erie Court, Pori Spring, and Rock Collins, and so on, Fortress Hill, those communities constitute thousands of persons. Unfortunately, there was nowhere for anybody to go and play a game. You could not hold a dance anymore because the community center was where we had all of that activity. You could not do a festival or anything there. And there was none other than Lester Vaughan school was not even in vogue at that time. And when the director got the news that the then owner of the plantation at Canefield donated that land, a community center was built out of wood to facilitate the residents. It's one of the most popular venues, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the parish. They had summer camps being held in there, all kinds of games, dominoes, churches went and they have their services there. Unfortunately, we understand, and I raised it with one of my other colleagues who will be able to guide me properly, but within recent times, someone has put a poster on it because the owner of the property has subsequently deceased. But having that property there since the 1980s, and now we are being told that somebody put up a sticker to say land for sale. I want for this government to make sure that the property at Hill House, that's what we call the property, where the people in St. Thomas recreate, particularly from those communities I've mentioned, not being able to use the community center, even though it has been closed, for the police station now to be put at King Garden. There's no form of recreation in those communities. Hilleby Primary School is way out. Holy Innocents Zone is way out. And it is difficult, but it is one of the most, Canefield is one of the most faithful and cohesive communities anybody else could want in Barbados. You don't hear fighting and cursing because they're all familial connections in that area. And then the Dunscombe people, and they go over. I would want for when rural and the urban commission come fully amalgamated, that attention be paid to that facility so it can be upgraded. And of course, for the government to ensure that the spot where it's now located be not bought over or taken over by any entity that says we don't want to come. Because the owner, whose name I will not call, but we know who owned all of Vaucluse and Spring Farm and those communities, before he passed, he gave it to the St. Thomas folk for recreation, because he had a special care and interest, because most of the persons who worked on his plantation were people from those environs in the agricultural belt and so on. So I am waiting patiently for the government of Barbados to make some kind of intervention, because we cannot afford to lose that clubhouse and then to displace so many thousands of children. Because despite what anybody says, Mr. Speaker, women and men in Barbados are still getting 5 and 6 children. There are communities when it's only one child that one has, and we have reasons for that, because we want to be able to maintain them. But in those communities, it is so cohesive. To move that clubhouse from there now called Hill House, it will be a heartbreaking exercise. The Honourable Minister of Sports, I've spoken with him, asking him to make representation as well. And the officer responsible for community development has also made recommendation. For the last year or so, we've been trying to work on it. But I believe that too, and Rural Development Commission helping to upgrade and expand it will make a difference. It's very seldom, Mr. Speaker, you will ever hear of anybody in Canefield or Dunscombe or those communities shoot at somebody, steal from somebody, because it is more a familial kind of gathering, families living around each other, and they're closely knit, and there's little or no violence or anything in that area. We want that community, sir, to continue. I will conclude, sir, by indicating that rural and urban development will serve an excellent purpose as an amalgamated project, And as I might have said before, the supervision of the contractors, or the screening of the contractors, because for me, no contractor should get 10 houses. A 2 house here or there, and if you do well, you can come back. But the inspection after the construction is extremely critical. And this government, as I said, sir, that I will leave the document here, a copy of this document here, when it speaks to how many houses were done in the 80s and how many were done since 2003 and so on, it blessed my heart. I would rather, Mr. Speaker, sir, the $8 million, the $20 million, the $30 million be spent or invested into upgrading houses, building new houses, adding on waterborne toilets, making sure that the electricity and everything else is in the house. Whatever community project can happen to decorate the community, fine with me if the government is going to be investing that, than to have to be investing millions in the prison at Dodds. Our young people will have a place where they have a space, they can play, they can talk, they can do whatever without being violent. We now have every time to be increasing the cost there because our young people need to get opportunities where persons like yourself and myself and other teachers retired and other persons in the communities to nurture them. And once we can get that happening, Mr. Speaker, I feel that Barbados will continue to shine and to grow even higher and better because our citizens will be comfortable in their homes at night. They will be able to sit with their children and read stories. They will be able to do so many things with the support of this collective entity that we have here in this country, Mr. Speaker, sir. And so I want, as I close again, to ask that the landlords, not necessarily the landlords, but those persons who will be given the tasks to start working together with the supervision. Once you supervise, you're not going to have a challenge. I'll close on this one note. I had 3 houses that were being repaired, Mr. Speaker. And the neighbor came and said, well, they call me Sintika, that's my name. The contractor that I have, he do my house good at all, Miss Ford. I said, what happened? The wage cap is all that is needed now. He had put in when you want to get the contract, what do you call it? A bid. And so on, and that one has been approved. But then the water is pouring in the bedroom. He refused to put on the wage cap. And when the lady called her, he cursed her and told her she's stupid. I want for this amalgamated entity to make sure that those contractors, male or female, respect the clients and follow through with what they are doing, because when they bid, as I know I have a document to show how much each of the houses in St. Thomas would have cost as individual houses, that gives me an understanding as what the works for the house would have been like. And if you have agreed and signed a formal document to say, I shall repair Cynthia Ford's house for the cost of whatever, and I will make sure that the 2 bedrooms and the roof and the windows are so. I believe that when the supervisors come back and they make their checks, they can't make any mistake. And the person cannot get the final drawdown until you go back. And that poor lady, she did not cry, and that was all. When she said the wage cap is missing, and all I tell him, he tell me that I want too much, I ask him for too much, the contracting thing, the money run out. No money can run out if you do a proper estimate. And therefore, I believe that going forward, we will continue to blaze a trail that we started, making sure that the poor people of Barbados get the opportunity to sleep well in their homes without getting wet, to be able to step in the yard without having to step on a soft stone alone, a proper step, handrails, whatever is necessary for them to be able to be safe in the homes where they live, because this government has determined it will be a better life for our people. We have been on that journey for many decades, Mr. Speaker, and I want for us to continue to look after the needs of Barbadians and visitors among us too. Because we cannot exclude the visitor. If the visitor came here and can't get back out, there's no money but the ticket, have to stay at the same family. So we will include them in it. At the end of the day, we are one people one nation. And once we look after the needs of others, I am sure that this amalgamated entity of the rural and urban development will make a tremendous difference in the quality of life of our Barbadians, particularly our aged, our children, our disabled, and all others among us. And I wish to thank you so for the privilege to be able to make that comment.
Honourable Member for St. Lucie.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise briefly to lend my voice in support of this very important and absolutely necessary piece of legislation here today. This is so because we have heard from the Honourable Member for Christchurch West. This merger will enhance the service delivery and reach of this new body, this new agency. We have had over a number of years, even before I was involved in elective politics, I have seen the work produced, namely by the Rural Development Commission, as I live and I represent a rural constituency. I remember that there were times when the geographical demarcation of boundaries determined which agency would complete the work that was required to help ordinary persons in this country. Indeed, it was the foresight, as we heard from the Honourable Member for St. Thomas a few minutes ago, it was the foresight of the then Prime Minister, late Professor Owen Seymour Arthur, to bring such a body, such agencies into this landscape and this space to be able to help fast track the assistance required for persons in these rural communities and ultimately the urban communities as well. Mr. Speaker, I remember at that point in time, as I said, I hadn't come into elective politics yet, but I did a lot of community work across the parish of St. Lucie. And there were times, I remember, there was a time when I was doing some community work a Saturday evening in the community of River Bay. I remember quite well. And Mr. Speaker, as I stood outside that house speaking with the senior citizen there, I remember that I looked through the bedroom window because she was looking out at me from in the bedroom, and as I looked up to the roof, Mr. Speaker, I could see sunlight. I could see light, which means that the roof was in a very poor state and needed to be repaired and replaced, as a matter of fact. And she said to me, "Can you help me do this?" And there are a lot of persons in that time and even today who require that sort of assistance, Mr. Speaker, from the state. They are not in a position to be able to help themselves like that. I said to that senior citizen then, the mandate which I have with the organization with which I'm working right now does not stretch that far and cannot execute or grant a request to what you are asking for. However, I will seek to find out how best your situation can be addressed. And so when agencies like these two that we've had were established, we were able to respond to the needs of the ordinary person out there. It is difficult. It is difficult if you have a single person living in a house, especially if they are senior citizen, and they're getting their pension, and their homes run into a state of disrepair, so they need to fix them. They can't just live in them like that. As a matter of fact, quite recently, only last week, while it was at a funeral in the constituency, a gentleman came to me and he said to me, I will send you some pictures and so on. My house is in a very, very poor state. I want to know if you will be in a position to help me. And when I looked at those pictures, Senior Minister, it hurt my heart. It touched my heart. And I said to that individual, we will do our best to address the situation. Not knowing that today we would have been bringing together two agencies which will be able to fast track work that is required in this country. You see, when you bring these agencies together, Mr. Speaker, immediately you would have a much larger pool of contractors, in my view, and persons with the expertise to be able to execute the jobs that would be required. We would have had some excellent work. And as I drive through my constituency, I was in Josie Hill up to last Thursday to be exact. And I saw the work done on some housing that was affected by Elsa. And the rebuilt home, or the rebuilt homes that I have seen, were really, really fantastic, which tells us that we have some good people out there. We have some good contractors. Not all contractors are bad, so to speak, or work or gives poor service or poor work. There are some excellent contractors out there who give of their best. Their names mean something to them, because it is not just about the money, getting a contract and being able to make some money. They are certainly proud to be able to complete an assignment, complete a house, the repairs and so on, and say to you, and to show off their work. And I am glad, Mr. Speaker, that when we bring these two agencies together to make them one, it would mean that we are able to reduce the cost in terms of running them, but it gives us more capital to be able to then spend within the various constituencies that people will be able to get the benefit of housing and so on. So you would have less money to be spent in terms of the actual running of the agency, but that extra money that you would have would be able to go towards doing more work within the particular constituencies and indeed across Barbados. It delivers for the country. I remember the days, Mr. Speaker, and perhaps sometimes I don't know what was the thought pattern behind it, but I guess, as the saying goes, it is what it is. I remember when the rural built, I don't know if urban did it, but I remember when rural built some short tenantry roads, providing access for people, providing access. That section apparently has been removed from their portfolio now. But in that time, I can go now to Broomfield and show you. As a matter of fact, on Thursday evening, I was there to see a road that was constructed under the directorship of the late Peter Scott, who was the director of rural back in the 1980s. Did some fantastic work. And not only, as I heard the honorable member for St. Thomas say, not only do we have now a body coming together, because you can give everybody everything, or you can give any agency whatever it needs, but the focus of the agency and the leadership of the agency must be focused on delivering what the needs of the people are, must be focused on working hard. And I heard our honorable member for St. James South indicate that. Must be focused on delivering for the people. This new agency, Mr. Speaker, I would imagine, will be focused on helping to abolish the pit toilets and preventing people from providing those bathroom facilities, etc. Where people that do not have this benefit, this facility right now, rainfall or sunshine, and they have a call of nature, they have to go outside in the yard, at what we call the outhouse. Those days, Mr. Speaker, are long, must be long, removed from the landscape of this country, this progressive country. If we are progressing, we must be able to bring along those people who are less fortunate and cannot provide such facilities for themselves. We must be able to do that. You cannot have in the 21st country, Barbados, where persons have a call of nature at 2 o'clock in the morning and have to use something. And I know my younger colleagues might not know of this. Have to use what you call the big teacup with the hand, any kimber, as they would say. Otherwise known, if you don't know, and this, I'm sure this is not on parliamentary,
No, it's not.
Mr. Speaker, what you call a topsy or a pole.
A vessel. The officer call it a vessel.
These things, Mr. Speaker, has to, in modern Barbados, I'm not going to say they have no place, because sometimes you can't throw away those things which kept you all along when you were coming up as a youngster. But there must be the position where persons are given, the poorest of the poor, those persons in our society must have the opportunity of using waterborne facilities like anybody else in any heights or terrace. They must have the opportunity to be able to use this. I have communities in my constituency, Mr. Speaker, where some people do not benefit from that up to this point in time. And I therefore want, and I expect that this new body will be very quick in delivering those kind of services in terms of the kind of assistance with waterborne facilities and eradicating pit toilets from our landscape as we move forward into the 21st century, Mr. Speaker. I look forward anxiously. And I expect to be able to send in some names to the new agency and ask for assistance, of course, with the resources being provided by the administration, by the government, with the resources being provided to ask for assistance for a number of people in a number of communities across St. Lucie. Because we are here to make lives better and improve the quality of life for our citizens in a 21st century Barbados, Mr. Speaker. I want to say I wholeheartedly support this move, and I look forward to a lot of work and quick execution of various projects across the landscape, not just St. Lucie, but across the landscape of Barbados, where persons will now benefit in their numbers wherever needed, where persons would benefit from assistance from government. It does not mean, let me caution you, it does not mean that persons who can help themselves will now sit back and wait for government to do it. It does not mean that you do that, because you leave such for the persons who cannot, who are not in a position to help themselves. No matter where you live, if you live in Pycorn and you can help yourself, please do that. Leave the assistance that may be required for persons who can least afford it. And give them the opportunity, give the government the opportunity to be able to help as many persons as is possible. And I support, Mr. Speaker, I want to say again, my unequivocal support to this piece of legislation with the amalgamation of these two entities to bring relief, improvement in standard of living for the people not only of St. Lucie, but for the people of Barbados. I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable for St. James North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill, which has been a long time in coming, since 2018, when we first won the governance of this country again. We've been speaking about the amalgamation of these two entities, rural and urban development. So it's been, over 6 years in coming. And we certainly look forward, and I join my colleagues in looking forward to great efficiencies in terms of the social development of our people, who will come into play within these organizations. We look forward to the opportunity for upgrading the operations and for significant improvement in the technology, which will be open to the Commission, and for the opportunity to employ quality persons, especially in the management of this Commission, as opposed to employing people who really and truly are square pegs in round holes, as has occurred at sometimes in the past in respect of the two commissions. We also look forward to greater reduction in red tape and bureaucracy in terms of the undertaking of the operations of this commission, as opposed to what presently, because the two commissions are still in existence, prevails, as well as to the lowering of the costs, because that is important in terms of the efficiency, the lowering of the costs of the public services. We've heard that The Rural Development Commission, in fact, pertain to parts of each of the 11 parishes of Barbados. So it makes sense really and truly to amalgamate rural and urban. And once this commission is given the resources, and this is key, because we could establish this new commission, but you have to give it the resources, the financial resources, the staff, the technical resources. And as I said, we have to make sure that the management is competent and efficient and is qualified to do the job. Because what we had, the Rural Development Commission was established, I think, by Act in 1995, 30 years ago, first came into being in 1996. I believe I'm correct in saying that the Urban Development Commission came on slightly after that in 1997. So these are two commissions which are being abolished of upwards of 30 years in existence. And the philosophy behind the establishment of those two commissions at that time certainly merited the times. The Urban Development Commission in its initial years, I recall, was greatly involved in the road asphalt program, and I believe the concrete road program as well. I remember the first, I believe, concrete road being done in rural Barbados through this commission in St. Lucie. The Right Honourable Owen Arthur, then Prime Minister, going in St. Lucie and opening up that concrete road, and transfer of titles. So you would recall, I believe you may have been a law student at that time. I was already a lawyer of 13 years or so practice, but the transfer of titles was brought within these two commissions as well, with the owner, the tenant, paying $2.50 a square foot, and the government, through initially these agencies, paying the balance to the landlord owner. In a lot of cases, I seem to recall that the land was about between $6 a square foot in all, $8 and $8 a square foot. The government then paid $5 roughly per square foot to the landlord owner, and the tenants then became owners of land. Something that is fundamental to our society, the vast majority of our people being descendants of slaves who, from ancestry to ancestry, passing down succession to succession, lived on these lands, which, as we know, were plantation lands during slavery and post-slavery period. And then all of this helped economically enfranchise our people in terms of property ownership, which is one of the most significant ownerships that you can have as a people. Everyone aspires to own a piece of the rock. And therefore, both of these commissions, which are being abolished, serve tremendous purpose when they were first established, not least in terms of transferring titles to the residents and the tenants who lived on these properties. They can then obviously take title to their credit union, to their banks, and improve their homes and use the title to the land as mortgages for the children's education if a close relative became ill, for medical expenses and all of that. Obviously, these two commissions have done a lot of good work over the years in terms of house repairs and replacement to houses. But the reality of the situation, sir, is that the efficiencies of these commissions fell off. the start of the falling off of the efficiencies was part of the last decade, sir. 2008, 2018, when the Democratic Labour Party last was in office. I remember sitting, sir, as an opposition member of Parliament in the second half of that last decade, and I, in my private practice as a lawyer, became involved. I volunteered to act on behalf of tenants in two locations, especially in my constituency, Dublin Road, sir, in Weston, and in the Garden as well, sir, Reed Road. And where, especially in Dublin Road, tenants had paid in their share of the purchase price. As I said, $2.50 a square foot, $9,000, sir. And for years, the government, under the Democratic Labour Party, would not pay the government's share of the subsidy. So the tenants had lodged their money in at the Land Registry of Barbados. The money sitting down there for 8 years, not getting any interest. They can't get any interest on it, sir. Government using the money for other purposes. And government not paying in its share of the subsidy. And I had meetings with the Ministry of Housing as an opposition MP, but also obviously, as I said, in my capacity as an attorney at law, working for my clients who were my constituents, with the then permanent secretary. I remember an afternoon and being told that there was just not enough money for this to happen, but we hope that there'll be money next year. I remember one year being told that only about $500,000 was voted in the estimates and was available for this title of transfer of titles transfer. I mean, these are significant aspects of our social development that fell by the wayside under the last Democratic Labour Party government. We hope, certainly I hope, that monies would be put in the estimates, this next year's estimates to start with, to enhance this transfer of titles program, sir. It is very important for us as a people who, as I said, have come out of slavery, colonialism, to empower our people. These two commissions, of course, gave loans, as we heard earlier today from both the acting Prime Minister presenting and especially the Honourable Member for St. James South in terms of business entrepreneurship and establishment of cottage industries among our people, an enterprise loan program, sir. Loans, of course, especially within the Rural Development Commission, were given for agricultural purposes and for agricultural development, sir. And I want to use this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to urge our fellow Barbadians, look, when you borrow money from these entities, in this case, the Rural and Urban Development Commission, pay back the loans. Because, you know, too many of our people, Mr. Speaker, regard a loan from a government department as money that you don't have to pay back. That is a grant. And that, you know, this government money, man, so, you know, I ain't really gotta help my head about paying this back. I gotta pay mother bills, light bill, telephone bill, etc. And the loan from the government, you know, is secondary. Not so. Our people have to realize that, look, when you do that, you're hurting your own self. Because it is a money that has dropped down from the sky that the government agency has now found to lend you. It is money that comes from the taxpayers of Barbados. It is money that comes from taxes that are levied. And people complain taxes too high. Well, taxes gotta be where they are if people don't pay back. Where what it is, and I'm certain that we will hear during the estimates debate, which I believe will start next week, how much money is owed, how many billions of dollars is owed by Barbadians, by people who live here, to the government of Barbados for various loans, whether it is student revolving loan fund, monies owed to national housing, monies owed in income tax, VAT, NIS, other monies owed to BRA. You know, we can't operate as a country in this mold. So I really urge, because I know that the Rural Development Commission and Urban Development Commission went through times when they had big outstanding loan portfolios owed by people they had lent money to start industries, to start entrepreneurship activities. And we really have to do better than that as a country. The Commission will continue to, as has been said in this debate, to eliminate pit toilets in which still prevail in too many areas of our country, including in my constituency. I know that some households have got indoor toilet facilities through the Rural Development Commission. Over the time that I have been Member of Parliament, wells and septic tanks also are an area through which Rural Development Commission was mandated, and which will continue under this commission to be installed as part of a poverty alleviation program. This bill is very important, say, in terms of our social development, and look forward to the continuation of monies borrowed to enhance houses, to repair houses, housing loans program, and as I said, enterprise loan program as well. What had happened, sir, over the 30 years is that there was a lot of duplication, because in addition, of course, to having two separate entities, one to deal with rural and one to deal with urban, and as I said, there was an overlap because all 11 parishes had demarcations in parts of their constituencies which were served by Rural Development Commission. But there was also of course, the National Housing Corporation. So efforts were duplicated. In some cases, all three of these entities lending money to citizens to repair their houses. So this certainly, what we're doing today, will prevent duplication as was previously existed across these two commissions, and should therefore bring greater efficiencies between them. I urge that the government, the ministry under which it would fall, this commission will fall under, be very demanded in terms of audited financial statements being produced. The records show that audited financial statements went missing, or were not produced in the first place, I should say, from around 2010, sir, 15 years ago. In other words, just after the start of the last decade, when the Honourable David Thompson died. And certainly, when I was in an opposition, the 5 years, 3 months, whenever that government brought a bill, or rather a resolution, inviting Parliament to vote monies as subsidy from central government to a statutory corporation, Transport Board, CBC, wherever. I would say, well, I can't support it, even if it is on the basis that you have not produced to me, for me to look at financial statements, for me to see what really is required. How do I know that this 20 million that we voting on today, you're asking us to vote on, is adequate anyway? Or could it be 10 million instead? Because no audited financial statements. It's time that we, for matters of transparency and accountability, sir, start taking this aspect seriously. And I understand that when, of course, we came into government 2018, by that time you had 8 years where you couldn't produce. You would have to be, quite honestly, a genius now to now work out, since you hadn't had financial statements audited for 8 years. So it has been difficult for that to be done over the last, 6 or so years. But with this new commission, fresh guard, fresh start, let us ensure that audited financial statements are done every year going forward and are brought and are laid in this Parliament as is required by the law. We therefore need the Commission to be properly resourced in terms of human resources as well. The leadership, as I said, has to be effective and competent, but not only the top manager, but also those below. The human resource department properly has to be established, technical department, because there must be supervision, proper supervision of the projects. And this is where I think that the public and the government of Barbados has been let down in terms of lack of proper supervision of the projects. And I can speak of Rural Development Commission. Let me limit my comments to that, because you have had cases, and the Honourable Member for St. Thomas has spoken, where you've had less than efficient and workmanlike undertaking of projects by individuals on behalf of the Rural Development Commission. So look, sir, you try to help what some people traditionally call the small black man. That is the truth. And I am all for that. In my private life, sir, as someone who owns a couple properties, sir, I have helped out, tried to help out the small black man too, when I could have gone for some high-name, reputable company, sir. So you try as a government to help out the small black man. But the small black man has to be fair to government too. Has to be fair to the taxpayers, the money not falling off the trees. So therefore, I really urge those who get the opportunity to do work as part of our thrust to create more entrepreneurs and a cadre of people and bring economic wealth to those who are traditionally disadvantaged, that we have to do proper work. So there have been instances in my constituency where, as the acting Prime Minister, Senior Minister, member for Christchurch West will tell you, that 4 weeks ago, I believe it was just over 4 weeks ago, he went on a tour with me, and the Ministry of Economic Affairs senator from the other place was there too. And one of the houses I took the team to was a house that for almost 3 years now repairs started, and can't be completed. Old lady, about 80 years old. It's not fair. Not fair to her, nor to the government, that has paid money for this project. And now government has to look for another set of money, I believe is what, $25,000 I've seen, to try and complete the repairs. So we need efficiencies in supervision. Also, there are cases where the projects take too long to complete. That is the truth. Projects by Rural Development Commission, again, senior minister would know of one where I almost tore out my hair and behaved badly, and that's not my nature, sir. You know me long. That ain't my nature to behave bad, but sometimes you got to behave bad and get on bad and to get some things done. Where 2.5 years, a house can't get complete. And government having to pay the rent for the occupants of the house for the 2.5 years. So that is double now wastage because the contractor is not efficient. So we have to be sure, as much as possible, to ensure that the contractors, the people who do the work, the people who get contracts for services to do these works, independent contractors, are efficient and are properly supervised and are held to account and are not paid any more monies than the work that they have done. Because this is taxpayers' money that we're dealing with. So that requires proper technical staff, qualified, who can supervise these projects efficiently. The reality, sir, is that, look, we know that there are 30 constituencies. The pie is small. The government has to juggle, and it has to be a difficult task for the Honourable Ministers of Finance, one of whom, of course, the lead Honourable Minister of Finance being the Prime Minister, to juggle all the parts which have to be put in for Barbados to work smoothly. And therefore, I understand that my constituency may not have got as much as some others in terms of house repairs, etc. I am grateful to the senior minister who has got involved in terms, senior minister, honourable member for Christchurch West, who has gotten involved and has pledged that he will ensure that St. James North gets some more houses done within the foreseeable future, house repairs done. And so the reality of it, look, as I said, government can't do everything, so I threw my foundation, Clarkson Foundation, repairing 4 houses at this time, as I have done through my foundation in the past, because can't expect that government going to do all. So at the present time, I through my foundation, repairing 4. So this is the reality of politics, what you have to do as a politician to help your people. I noticed that there is going to be the establishment of a rural and urban development fund under the Act, and that is good, sir. And part of that fund also will be to accept grants and donations which can be used in the development of our people in fulfillment of the objectives of the Act. And I really hope that there could be a thrust to involve the diaspora in terms of the development and putting in grants and donations in this fund. People who have done well, who have been born in most cases in poverty, as a way to give back to their country in terms of our social development, because that is what this is about. The issue of derelict buildings, sir, is very important as well. We spoke a bit about derelict buildings 2 Tuesdays ago, when we discussed the Health Services Amendment Bill. But there are thousands, I don't know the exact figure now. I know it used to be about 16,000 derelict buildings all across both urban and rural Barbados. And that is a lot on 166 square miles. Is over how many now? Is 1,300 now. Sorry, I said 16,000, I meant 1,600. Might be a bit less now, I don't know, but I see that the bill also mandates, when it becomes law, the commission to deal with derelict buildings, and that is also going to be a significant responsibility on the commission. The minister under section 14 may give the commission directions of a general nature. In respect of policy, the commission shall comply with these directions. We know, Mr. Speaker, you know very well too, of course, that in some pieces of legislation, the directions are specific. I like the idea of general directions, which gives, the commission obviously leeway. You don't need political interference all the time in the operations of a commission, statutory board. We've seen the case under the last government with Barbados Water Authority, sir, where $1.49 billion unaccounted for by the then Member of Parliament for St. Philip West, who thankfully present Honourable Member for St. Philip West beat. And I look forward to that honourable member beating that member again, because I don't know why he's coming back. Close to 70 years old, he had his time already, got beaten twice and running again. He needs to account for the $1.4 billion gone astray under his ministerial mandate from the Barbados Water Authority, where he issued, in many cases, specific directions of a specific nature in respect of policy, and did bare foolishness. $1.49 million gone from the taxpayers, and he has the audacity to say that he running again, named in the 15. What people think this is at all? But that is the nature of a democracy. That we encounter a Democratic Labour Party now led by an individual. And I listened to the Honourable Member for St. George South here today, and I was wondering if I should call the police, because a man, he was half killing somebody sometimes, real bad. He was half killing the leader of the opposition, and dealt with him in a substantive way today. But we have to remember, and sometimes you have to have sympathy for the honourable leader of the opposition, because the honourable leader of the opposition was in this party for 6 years. He was part of us totally condemning the years under which the Democratic Labour Party last held government, between 2008 and 2018. I remember, I think it was December 2016, when we had a meeting down Top Rock, where I spoke and he spoke on that platform, condemning the then Prime Minister, the then member for St. Michael's South, tremendously. Well, nobody cursed the then Prime Minister worse than the now leader of the opposition that night. Cuss him bad. So he himself agrees with us that the Democratic Labour Party in its last term of office was an abysmal failure to the people of Barbados. So really and truly, you find yourself in a tremendous swirl of mental anguish. And that's what he finds himself. And, somebody who, switched parties probably 4 times now. The last time before this, when he left the Democratic Labour Party, after the 1999 election, after being beaten for the 2nd time, the Democratic Labour Party did not even know that he had left them. That is the truth. They didn't know. He cursed the then member for St. John very, very badly, who then became Prime Minister. Even after the Honourable David Thompson died, the present leader of the opposition was cussing him bad. So I don't know how he plans to go and run in St. John now. Well, the first question he should answer is why you dislike David Thompson so much. That from the time you left the Democratic Labour Party in 2000 or around there, after getting beaten twice and blaming David Thompson and the elder statesman of the DLP, Sir Philip Graves, for the 2 election defeats, and even continuing to curse David Thompson up to 2010, when he regrettably died, and thereafter. How can you now be thinking of running in St. John? But that is the psychological problem of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, sir. So, every week when he comes in, and as the Honourable Member for St. George South emphasized that today, keeps repeating himself in speeches of 2-3 hours, which can be done in a half hour, you have to understand the basis of his position. But sir, I digress. The commission will now have a 9-member board, should be more nimble. I'm assuming that board will be made up as well of very competent people who have interests throughout Barbados, in both rural and urban Barbados. And we really look forward to the advancement of the work of this commission as part of the development of this Barbados. I know that there are many people who hold the view that there are 2 Barbadoses, and that rural Barbados may not be given as much resources as urban Barbados. Traditionally, even 20 years ago, 10 years ago. But sir, with the amalgamation of this now rural and urban into one commission, we look forward to great efficiencies and a greater equity in the development of Barbados for the benefit of all our people. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have the privilege of being able to rise to participate in the debate and to support this bill, Urban and Rural Development Commission. I maybe need to start someplace where my constituents would expect me to begin. There are a lot of things they've asked me to say. I just have spoke some. And there are a number of things that my constituents want me to share. But the first one is that one of my earlier recollections of the Rural Development Commission was when it was located in Spike Sound. And one of the questions that my constituents asked over the years, and constituents from St. Lucie as well, was how do you move the Rural Development Commission from rural Barbados and put it in town? And I share that because what I want to say, while supporting what we're doing, is to speak really to the fact that there needs to be an appreciation of a number of things. And I'm going to share a few of them as I go on. But I think I really want to impress that in the new organization, the Urban and Rural Development Commission, that there be, even though it will be a single organization, and I support the concept of a single organization. Barbados is 430 square kilometers. We can fit in most medium-sized rivers in Guyana. I may not even be able to see the other side. So that with a country as small as ours, the idea of a single commission is one that makes sense, even though it is speaking to urban and rural. Our urban spaces are not that large, all things considered. Neither are our rural spaces because of the size of the island. But I started where I did because in this new organization, there must remain, and I use the word remain because I'm not saying that it is absent, but I'm saying that there must remain an appreciation for the differences across even a very small island. Communities are different. There's a difference between St. Peter and St. Michael, even though there's a relationship between St. Peter and St. Michael. There's a difference between St. Peter and St. Philip, even though there are some who say, well, both of us start with P. But there are differences. Nowadays, people use fancy terms like nuanced. But in St. Peter, we speak very simply to say that there are differences. And in this new organization, I want us all to be certain that there is the understanding that how you relate to a situation in urban Barbados may be different to the way you approach a similar situation in rural Barbados. There are people who say, and I'm quoting people because I don't want to make a judgment, really not in this forum, but there are people who say there's a difference between the country and the town in Barbados. I have also heard people say that there's a difference between town people and country people in Barbados. I've heard that the language that town people use is different from country people. And I see the Honourable Member for St. Andrew agreeing, because St. Andrew is considered sometimes even more rural than St. Peter. So even within rural Barbados, there are differences in approaches. And the new Urban and Rural Development Commission, once this bill is passed and all the other things that are to be done have been done, needs to recognize that even now, while it is a single organization, when it has become a single organization, that it has to understand the context within which it will be operating. And I share that out of my own thoughts, but that is also what the people of St. Peter, my constituents, would want me to share with this honourable chamber. Now, St. Peter has received some assistance, particularly with respect to damage caused by Hurricane Beryl. I don't think that there are any of us as members of Parliament, representatives of the people, duly elected, who are satisfied with the work that has been done. That is to say, the volume of the work. And that is not to bash the organizations too much, but we come to this place to be honest, and I am part of a party that values honesty. People share their views in this place and in the other place, and I am very open to varying views and differences of opinion. I believe that our responsibility is to argue our points, put forward our positions, and allow people to make decisions. So whereas we have received some level of assistance, we believe that more could have been done to assist us in St. Peter. We are aware, though, that were it not for these same organizations that we do not believe have done enough, were it not for these organizations, the challenges that we faced coming out of the freak storm, and then I don't remember the name of the storm that happened around the same time, Elsa, and then Beryl. Were it not for these organizations set up, like the Honourable Member for Christchurch West said earlier today when he introduced the bill, set up by my predecessor as Member of Parliament, Professor the Right Honourable, the late Professor the Right Honourable Owen Seymour Arthur. If these organizations were not in place, that is to say the Rural Development Commission and the Urban Development Commission, we would have had greater challenges in addressing the needs of the people of this country who were impacted, negatively impacted by Beryl and by Elsa and by the freak storm. And so we recognize that the entities were set up for a specific reason. They were set up so that people who are vulnerable, people who cannot afford insurance, people who sometimes we say, and I'm not, well, let me just put it in economic terms because it's not a phrase I like, but we say at the bottom of the ladder. Just let me say at the bottom of the economic ladder. These institutions were established so that those persons who a society must help, if it is to be considered a civilized society. These organizations were established so that the persons who need the collective assistance can receive the collective assistance. These organizations were established because as a party, we recognize that there are things that all of us have to pitch in and put in a pool so that those who need can get the assistance. That is the philosophy from which we operate. The Urban Development Commission and the Rural Development Commission were established for that purpose, to take taxpayers' dollars from all of us to help those of us who really need the assistance. Transitioning to an Urban and Rural Development Commission does not alter the philosophy that established the original institutions. The establishment or the transition to an Urban and Rural Development Commission must not be allowed to alter the philosophy that underpinned the establishment of the Urban Development Commission and the Rural Development Commission. I say that, Mr. Speaker, and I repeated it because human beings, sometimes we can be a little bit funny. We can be a little bit strange sometimes. And I say we, because I'm a human being as well. Sometimes when we hear about transitioning and moving forward, too often we lose touch with our roots. We believe that we have graduated. So there are people in Barbados, again, use this as an example. There are people in Barbados who will tell you which secondary school they went to, but will not remember their primary school if they feel that other people consider their primary school to be a no-name school. So they will tell you that they went to St. Giles or Wesley Hall, you know, but they may not want to tell you that they went to Black Bess. That's where I went to school, proudly so. They may not want to tell you that they went to St. Clement's. They may be happy to say they went to Charles F. Broome. So there is this thing in human beings about moving on, moving forward, which sometimes causes a disconnect with the past. The new organization, the Urban and Rural Development Commission, must remain rooted and grounded in the philosophy that underpinned the establishment of its originating institutions. It is being set up, it meaning the new entity, is being set up to do the same thing as the two original entities, but to do it better and more efficiently and more effectively. More efficiently, more effectively, better, but to do the same thing. To do what my predecessor as Member of Parliament called to stop, well, to help, because there's only one arm of government, but to stop poor people from being poor. That is what these entities were set up to do. And that is the reason why, Mr. Speaker, you had situations where they helped people with housing, why they provided roads, short roads in communities, why they give small loans to persons who were repairing, who were setting up business. The idea was to empower people who could not do what some people who have distorted minds call pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. You know, I don't know, well, I think I know what they mean, but I do not agree. Not everybody got even boots. So you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps if you don't have boots. This organization and its legacy institutions were set up to help people to move forward in terms of their economic development. And when you talk about housing and roads, you're talking maybe less about economic development and more so about social development, or maybe socio-economic development. But a road that is paved, that leads to my house, that replaces a track, places me in a very different frame of mind. In a Barbados that is becoming, or has become, very material in terms of, not material in terms of the dialectical method in that area, but material in terms of people wanting a lot of material things. People sometimes are embarrassed to invite people to their homes when their homes are not in good repair and when the access to their homes is not good. And so when a house is repaired and the road to that house is made good, put in a decent state, that person is in a different frame of mind. The Urban and Rural Development Commission, when it comes into being, must continue to understand why it exists. It is important that all those who become involved, who transition with it, who become involved in its leadership and in the actual workings, they must continue to remember the reason for the organization. I think I've said enough on that. If I move past the reason for the organization, I also, and in this, I join a view expressed by the Honourable Member for Christchurch South. The matter of respect for heritage is also one that must be maintained. And if it does not exist, it must come into play. There is a proclivity in Barbados to destroy. Destroying has become, and I've seen it about twice in Spike Sound. Once with respect to, let me give it in chronological order. With respect to Arlington House, a building constructed by the enslaved for people who were not enslaved. But there was an attempt to destroy that building because of some issues, some engineering issues. And the tendency just to lick down things because you can't exercise your brain to figure out how to fix it is a challenge for me. You cannot default to licking down. A number of people had to spend some money, engage some people I guess, in high office to save Arlington House. Arlington House was to have been destroyed. The second one, which is one that is probably closer to my heart, is the house where C. Van Roland Edwards grew up. Now, that house started to have some challenges. And government agencies, and that's the reason why I'm raising it, because Urban and Rural Development Commission will be a government agency. Their first response was to attempt to knock down the whole house. A disrespect to the man who wrote the music to our national anthem. The man who wrote the music to words that said, "These fields and hills beyond recall are now our very own." People who grew up, and they didn't grow up stupid under the Union Jack, some of them grew up under the Trident. Initial response laid down the whole thing. We were able to, well, those who were really active in the fight, and I pay a lot of debt, there's a lot of debt due to Mr. Edwards' nephew, Mr. Woodruff. The compromise was that the top was taken off and the bottom, there is a two-story building in Spike Song on Chapel Street. The bottom was retained. The Urban and Rural Development Commission, as it comes into existence, must respect the heritage and the history of this country. They must respect the work of our enslaved ancestors who built structures in this country. They must not do what was done in Allendale to build what is now the Charles Duncan O'Neill Highway. You push down all the huts, those structures that were used by the recently emancipated ancestors. Push them down. My cable then. You make the road to take into account a tree that is old, but you let down the buildings where my ancestors used to live. The Urban and Rural Development Commission must recognize the philosophy upon which it is built and must have respect for the heritage of this country and for the vernacular of a lot of design that we heard spoken about earlier today in this debate. While I speak about housing, Mr. Speaker, I will repeat, and I've said it many times in this honorable chamber, but I have to repeat it because it remains a concern. I know that the honorable member for St. George South is aware and is attempting to see how the ministry could work in this kind of a situation. And I understand the challenges, but it is a matter of creating housing in communities. We bemoan the breakdown of family, the breakdown of communities. We hear, for example, and this is just 2 weeks ago, of large schools built for hundreds, now inhabited during school time by 100, just over 100, sometimes less than 100. Mr. Speaker, I'm of the view that we have to create housing solutions within existing communities. We have to create housing solutions within existing communities. We cannot, as a government, we cannot, as a country, preside over in some cases, urbanization. The only words that are coming to me now are not words that I would want to use. But bringing, and I'm not talking about any what we call bad words, but disparaging words, and this is what I'm trying to say. We cannot preside over bringing people from the villages across this country and putting them into clusters. That has its benefits. That has its place. Barbados cannot develop without some of those. But in Barbados, we also must develop housing solutions within communities. There are lots of people in urban and rural Barbados who want to remain in their communities. People want to remain, generally speaking, where they grew up. Because we now live in a Barbados where what used to be far, far, far is not that far because of highways that have been built. Most of them under the Barbados Labour Party. And so places are not as far, as remote as they once were. And when you drive around Barbados, you see people building significantly sized houses in some of the remotest, what could have been considered some of the remotest places in this country. But we have to find a way. And I said when I started on this point to say that I said that I understand the reason why we sometimes go in the direction we go. It is much more economical to do a greenfield site that can accommodate 200 houses, 100 houses, and build. There is one set of services, one set of... So it is economically feasible. We understand that what we do using taxpayers' money. So we don't want to waste the money. And that is the reason why we have these clusters of houses. So that what I'm saying is really less to the Honourable Member for St. George South and more to Barbados. And I say more to Barbados because I want us, Barbadians, to understand that creating those units in smaller numbers in existing communities may mean a larger outlay of money per unit. We may not get the economies of scale. And I'm really pleading with Barbadians to understand that the money will not go as far, but the social benefit, I believe that the social benefit will outweigh the extra economic costs. And it is something that we have to do as a government, but that the people of our country must allow us to do as we spend their money. I just left, like I said, Speightstown, the funeral of one who came into Six Mains and became a part of Six Mains. And obviously many of the persons attending that funeral this afternoon of Mr. Cox are from Six Mains. And the people of Six Mains have made it very clear to me that after they have voted for me, must not allow a discussion on housing in this honourable chamber where they sent me and where they have the power to unsend me. They have indicated to me very clearly that I must not speak in a debate in this place on housing without saying very loudly and clearly that the matter of land tenure in Six Mains must be resolved. It must be resolved. I know that the Honourable Senior Minister, Acting Prime Minister, has been working on that. I've had initial conversations with the Honourable Member for St. George South, the Minister of Housing as well. But I have to say, and I have to say it loudly, the matter of land tenure in Six Mains has been outstanding for far too long, since the early 1970s. All kinds of people have tried to resolve it. It must be settled. The people who have lived there for generations must have title to the land that they and their ancestors have inhabited for decades. It must be solved, and I will not ease up in terms of lending my voice to that effort. As I close, Mr. Speaker, I want to just speak a little bit on the actual transition. And I want to say this in the context of being maybe the principal minister in cabinet responsible for matters of interest to workers. And I assure not just the employees of the Urban Development Commission and the Rural Development Commission, but I also assure Barbadians more generally. I assure Barbadians more generally that the workers who now are employed by the Urban Development Commission and the Rural Development Commission, those workers will not be disadvantaged. They will not be disadvantaged. This Barbados Labour Party has done a number of amalgamations already since we've come into office, and our track record is that we do not allow persons to be disadvantaged in these attempts to bring greater efficiency and effectiveness to the work of government in this country. And so we've adopted a concept which I got from my former permanent secretary. She would always say, "Minister, I am putting my foot on every rung of the ladder." And that was to say, I am not going to allow us to make any mistakes. And I must say, I'm talking to a person who is also a former trade union leader. And so we've developed a method that allows us to make sure that at every step of the way, workers and their organizations are involved in whatever we do. And I'm happy to say that the Honourable Senior Minister, Acting Prime Minister, has been, along with the persons who are actually working with making this a reality, have been ensuring that the workers' representatives are involved in this process all along the way. As a matter of fact, as he said earlier, the Honourable Member said earlier, we are able to bring this bill to this Honourable Chamber because we have already had long discussions with the workers' representatives. The discussions are not concluded, and there are still other matters to be addressed. But we are comfortable that the workers and their representatives, or the workers through their representatives, feel satisfied with where we are at the moment. That is how we operate as a Barbados Labour Party government. We make things better for the country, but we make sure that the workers are not disadvantaged. And so if there are persons who ought not to transition and not to, well, there will be, whatever is offered will be something that is decent to those workers. It will be negotiated like how we do everything, and we'll make sure that those workers are satisfied. And as the Honourable Acting Prime Minister also said, it may be that some of them could find opportunities, economic opportunities, with the Urban and Rural Development Commission, the new entity. The final thing I want to say, Mr. Speaker, is that sometimes a new organization that sounds like a larger organization, so we move from a Rural Development Commission and an Urban Development Commission to a Rural and Urban Development Commission. So I'm not sure, I may have the order incorrect. I'm not sure which comes first. Rural and Urban. Well, as MP for St. Peter, I'm happy with that ordering. Mr. Speaker, you may not be, but I am happy. But we have not left off urban. And it's not second because we forgot to put it first. It is alphabetical. Okay, so rural comes before urban. And I'm not saying that because I want the organization to operate in that way, but if it did, I wouldn't complain. But sometimes when we move from small organization to large organization, there may be a feeling that some of the nimbleness could be lost. I am satisfied that through the work of the Honourable Senior Minister, Acting Prime Minister, that will not happen. But I want to say to you and through you to those who will work in the new organization, that a new, larger organization must not become a less nimble organization. Nimbleness in this case, Mr. Speaker, does not have to reflect size necessarily. And I end where I began to say that if there is a good grasp of the philosophy that underpins the organization, there will be no need to make real any perception that a new, larger organization will be any less nimble, any less flexible than either of its original organizations. A larger organization, but set on the same philosophy of helping ordinary people, must recognize that in order to do that, it must be nimble. As a matter of fact, the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central would want me to say it must be able to pivot, and pivot quickly, because things happen, and people who are vulnerable need that shoulder, whether it's an economic shoulder or a social shoulder to lean on. The organization must be nimble, must not believe that now that it is larger, it must become bogged down in a greater bureaucratic kind of system. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am really happy to be able to stand here to support this bill, the Rural and Urban Development Commission bill, the bill that will bring together these two institutions. I look forward to Barbados being served even better when this organization comes into being, because it comes into being built on the learnings coming out of a number of decades of operation of the Urban Development Commission and the Rural Development Commission. It is new, but not brand new. It is new as an amalgamated institution. It is not new because it is built on the experiences, the lived experiences of its foundation entities. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am fully persuaded that based on what we have learned through the existence of the two original institutions, that this new institution, the Rural and Urban Development Commission, will serve Barbados well, will serve the vulnerable in this country well, will serve those who need the assistance well, and that Barbados will be able to be judged as a truly civilized society, because we look out for those who need the assistance, who may not be able to look out for themselves. I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of the chamber until 5:30 p.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 5:30 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 5:30 p.m.